Hi everyone, Salesforce Development Day 27. Let's see what we are going to learn today. We'll quickly go through the previous session overview and then we'll talk about the SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language, and what are the Gartner limits for the Salesforce Object Query Language, how to invoke the Salesforce Object Query Language, and by using the developer console, the query editor window, where we can run the query editor. And let's see the use cases, homework, and quiz. And then we'll see how to invoke using the Apex programming. How can we invoke the SOQL? And what is static SOQL queries and dynamic SOQL queries? If there is a time, then we will see the use case of the static SOQL and what are the limitations, where class for the non-parameterized, where class for the parameterized procedure, right? So we'll have a final conclusion. So these are the topics that we are going to see today. Now, what did we learn in the last session? Yes, we have seen the OOPS concept, inheritance, and the properties of the inheritance. And then we have seen what is the schema. In the schema namespace, what are the different methods are available, how to retrieve the record type, right? So what are the different classes are available? Record type ID class. We have seen different retrieving all the record type or a specific record type ID based on the name. We have seen all those things. Now today we are going to see the Salesforce object query language. Let's say Salesforce object query language is, let's assume that we have a table. In the database, we have a table, assume that this is the account table, or you can assume it any custom table. This data is available inside the database. Right, in this table or in this object, there are few fields are there. Possible that might be standard field or a custom field. Might be standard fields or a custom fields. Now this data, we wanted to pull it into the Apex, or maybe I'm executing some custom logic. So here we have some custom logic. Custom logic, we will write it into the Apex. So while writing the custom logic, so what I want is I need to retrieve the data from the database in order to perform certain action or a certain business logic. In order to execute certain business logic, we need to pull the data from database. When we have to pull the data from the database, then how can we pull it from the database and here? So here there are 3 records are there, 1, 2, 3. So assume that I wanted to pull all the records. If I wanted to pull all the records into the Apex, so how do we do that? In order to retrieve the data, we will retrieve it using the SOQL. SOQL is nothing but Salesforce object language. Salesforce object language. Salesforce object language. So one of the option is by using the Salesforce object query language, we can able to pull the data. So SOQL is full form is Salesforce object query language. So by using this SOQL queries, we can fetch either one record or a more than one record. Possible that if you want a single one record or more than one record, we can pull it. More than one record. We can pull the data from Salesforce database. And if you want, we can add the condition. So in scenario, like in real time, when you are running the normal SOQL query, like you are just running the SOQL query. When you just run the SOQL query, you can run the SOQL query to pull all the data, to pull all the records. But in the real time, when we are writing the business logic, I might not need all the records, right? So in the database or in the table, I have 1,000 records are there. There are 1,000 records are there. Now I do not want to pull 1,000 records in my real-time scenarios. We hardly pull either one record or a maximum we might pull the 3 records, 3 to 5 records, right? Most of the times I might pull only one record. Now I do not need 1,000 records. Out of 1,000 records, either one record or a 5 records or 10 records, I might need it. Because we will have a different condition that we will be looking at. Because I don't need to play with all the 1,000 records. All the 1,000 records I need not to play. So example, what are the today records are created? Only today's created records I wanted to get the information. Now maximum today how many records can be created? Assume the 20 records or 50 records can be created. If there is a 10,000 records in the system, possible that 1,000 records are created today. But in most of the time, in the real time, we do not want to pull all the records, right? For example, I'm writing the Apex class for a business logic. When I'm writing the business logic for certain conditions, because when I'm writing the business logic, we have to definitely put the condition. Now, based on this condition only, I wanted to pull the data from the database. What is the condition? Condition could be a, like in the account object, I have a rating. So where the rating equal to warm, where the rating equal to warm, or where the rating equal to hot, or where the rating equal to cold, or if you want to check another condition, like industry equal to banking. If you want to check industry equal to banking, these details only, these records only I wanted. Only these records only I want. In that case, how can I pull the data? Now, in order to pull all the data, what we will do is there is a standard query. SOQL queries always starts with keyword called select. SOQL query always starts with a keyword called select statement. Select statement. By using the select statement, we will start writing the SOQL query. So select is basically, if SOQL query, it starts with a select keyword. Now select is, it starts with a select keyword, and then we will be specifying the what are the fields that I wanted to pull. Here the API fields name, API fields name. API fields name. Now, once this API fields name is done, then from which object I am pulling it? From which object I am pulling it? So this is standard SOQL query. Object name, which object I am pulling the details, and this is, and what are the API details? What are the API details? Right, so object name, API. What are the API name is there? Object API name. Right, select is the starting keyword. SOQL is always starts with a select keyword, and then we'll have to mention what are the fields that we are going to pull it from which object, or from which database. From which database we are trying to pull the records. So this is, it is going to explain it, which object we are pulling the information. Right, so select API field names from object API name. Now this means I am going to pull all the records. I'm going to pull all the records that are available inside the table or inside the object. So this is going to pull all the records. It is going to pull all the records. But in the real time, hardly we receive it for all the records. We don't do that all the records. Every time we use a condition. Now, in order to apply a condition, now instead of pulling the all the record, I need to apply the condition. If I want to apply the condition, we have a keyword called where. Keyword called where. So from object name, and then we have to specify the where condition. Where is the standard keyword, and then you have to specify the condition here. You have to specify the condition where rating equal to 1 or a industry equal to type bank or a email address is not equal to null. Some condition we have to specify. Wherever the email is not equal to null, those records we are going to pull it from the table. And similarly, if you wanted to group by, like in other language, like we have a SQL. So in the SQL also, what we will do is we will use a keyword called having. Having is nothing but having also we will specify the condition. There are some conditions which we wanted to check where this condition is available in the record, and those records I wanted to pull it, and we need to group by those column names, like a group by uh, account name or a group by account phone number, group by account rating, right? So which are the one you wanted to group by, you can group by. So here it is a column name. So having the conditions and group by the column name. So this is how by using these keywords, these are the additional keywords which are available inside the SOQL query. Not only this, we have a order by. We have a order by. Now order by is also you need to specify which order by sorting order, whether you wanted to go for a ascending order or whether you wanted to go for a descending order. So if you want any ascending, descending, then you can specify the ascending or a descending here. Right? Similarly, if you want to pull only the one record, then you can say limit. Limit, it is going to, we need to specify number of records, how many records you wanted to run, how many records you wanted to execute it, how many number of records to return. Now here offset is number of records, how many records you wanted to skip it. So this is offset is basically to skip it, to skip. So this is number of records to skip, how many records you wanted to skip. Do you want to allow the all rows? That means all rows you wanted to execute it. Or we have some keywords which is called as a per update. If you have a access, like sometimes users will not be having a access. Sometimes users will not be having a access. Now in that case, if they do not have a access to the, if they do not have access to the fields or anything, in that case, what we will do is we will check per update, per update. Now for this update, now what we are going to do is whether if you are going to update it or not. Do you have a access to this or not? Everything it is going to check, and this will allow. This will allow. We will see all these scenarios. Now let's see. So SOQL is Salesforce Object Query Language. By using the SOQL queries, we can fetch either one or a more number of records from one or a more object from the Salesforce object or a Salesforce database. And we can add one or more user-defined conditions to filter the records. And SOQL query always starts with a select statement. Take a notes of it. Okay. Now, so the statement or the query is syntax is select what are the field name or a field API name from object name, right? And then this is to pull all the records. If you want only few records to pull it from the database, then you have to use the where condition, where whatever the condition is there. The condition you need to specify it, or else you can use the having or a group by. So by using this, you can get the information order by, you can get whether you want to order by ascending or a descending, how many records you wanted to pull it, the limit, one record or a two records, how many records you wanted to pull it. And then we can see the offset. Offset is how many records you wanted to skip it. And then we'll see the all rows and for update. So this is what we have seen just now. Now let's move on. Now, whenever we are writing the SOQL query, right? So while writing the SOQL query, definitely Salesforce is going to apply Garner limits on the SOQL query. Now let's see what are the SOQL Garner limits on this. So maximum 100 SOQL queries inside the transaction. When I say inside the transaction, that means single execution, single transaction execution, or a single debug log. Now, whenever we execute something, there is a log gets generated right here. So the every log is considered as a one transaction. Now, each transaction, the limit is 100 SOQL query. Each transaction, the limit is 100 SOQL queries. So when the user tries to invoke more than 100 SOQL queries, then Salesforce is going to throw an error message saying that you are crossing the SOQL queries 100. What are the Garner limits are there? You are crossing those limits. So the error message, the developer will be seeing it, system dot limit exception too many SOQL queries. When you receive it or when any developer receive it, SOQL system.limit exception, too many SOQL queries, 101, that means they have crossed the Garner limits. Because the maximum query we can do it inside single transaction is 100. Now, each SOQL query can maximum return the 50,000 records. Maximum return the 50,000 records. That means in the single transaction, we can have a maximum of 99 SOQL queries. As soon as you reach the 100, immediately, if there is a more than 100 SOQL queries are there, there will be an error will be received. And each SOQL query, that means single SOQL query, can return 50,000 records. That means if you have a 5 SOQL queries, if you are returning it, right? So 5 SOQL queries are out of 5, each SOQL query is returning the 50,000, right? Here you have a 5 SOQL queries if you are writing it. You are writing the 5 SOQL queries. Now each transaction is returning the 50,000. Each transaction is returning the 50,000. And each transaction is nothing but each SOQL query. Each SOQL query. That means into you. Another one, it is like a 50,000. Right, another one is also 50,000. Another one is also 50,000. Assume that the last one is, whatever the last one is, that it is just returning the 10,000. Right, so that means each SOQL query can return maximum of 50,000 records. Maximum of 50,000 records. And the best practice, now when we have this kind of a Garner limits, so Salesforce suggests the best practice. Best practice is, while using the SOQL query, do not write the SOQL query within the for loop. Within the for loop, do not write the SOQL query. So always write the SOQL query outside of the for loop. Because sometimes what happens is when you write within the SOQL query, so sometimes what we will do is we will write a SOQL query let's assume that I am looping through the account. So per account, right? Then ACC, what are the above account data I need? I have it. I'll get the list of account, otherwise account list. What are the list is available? I'm looping through the all the list. I'm looping through the all the list. When I'm looping through the all the list, I don't know how many records it might be account list is having it. Possible that account list is having the 100 records or a 50 records or a 10 records, or it might be a 200 records. And if you try to write a SOQL query inside the for loop, if you try to write a SOQL query inside the for loop, now what will happen if you have a 200 records? Now every time you will be executing the SOQL query, right? So when you execute the every time the SOQL query, as soon as it reaches the 100, now it will immediately throw an error saying that system dot limit exception too many SOQL queries. So that's the reason to not write the SOQL query inside the for loop. It has to be always outside the for loop. Before starting the for loop or after completing the for loop, you have to specify the SOQL query if you need it. And the second best practice is do not fetch unnecessary field or unnecessary records from the object by using the SOQL query. Unnecessary records or unnecessary fields means if you do not want any of the records, sometimes I just need only one record information. But what we will do is we will query the entire rows, all the rows we will query it. That is unnecessary of querying the all the rows. And sometimes we do not need the information of few fields. So when we do not need the information of few fields, do not query it. Best practice is do not fetch unnecessary fields information from the object by using the SOQL query. Now, these are the best practices. But in case if I need a more than 50,000 records to be written, each SOQL query can return the maximum of 50,000 records that we know. But in case if I want more than 50,000 records, there is a way which we can do it, right? So we have a asynchronous or a different ways we can do it. So there are different ways to pull the records, more than 50,000 record, but that is also there is a limitation is there. I cannot go as long as a very huge number, right? I cannot go huge number. There is a possibility, definitely there is an alternate solution is there, but because of that alternate solution, your system performance may go down, right? So that's the reason, always try to reduce it based on the what are the data you needed, just query only those data and those fields. So do not use unnecessary records. If you do not need those records to be performed, because after pulling the records, business logic is not looking at those records data, then what is the point of pulling those records? So that's the reason, do not fetch unnecessary information or the field details if your business logic does not look at those information. Take a notes of it. Done. Okay. So let's see a few questions. What is the full form of the SOQL? What is the full form of the SOQL?
Salesforce Object Query
Salesforce
Language.
Object Query Language.
Salesforce Object Query Language. And by using the SOQL, what can we achieve?
Whatever the required data we want from the database.
We can
Retrieve the data from the database.
right. So we can fetch or retrieve the data from the database. Then what is the syntax for the SOQL?
Select
Field name,
what are the
API
fields
name.
from object name where like we have conditions.
Right. And what are the governor limits of the SOQL?
Max of hundreds of the queries.
And only we can fetch up to 50,000 of records.
We can retrieve, each SOQL query can retrieve the 50,000 records. And the SOQL query, how many SOQL queries can be written?
50,000. We can write
100.
How many SOQL queries can be written?
100.
100 per transaction. Right. So now, how to invoke the SOQL queries? Now we have understood the SOQL. Now how to invoke the SOQL query? Where should I need to write the SOQL query? Now there are different ways which we can do it. SOQL query, invoking the SOQL query. So by using the developer console, query editor window, we have a query editor window. By using this, what we can do is we can invoke the SOQL queries. We can invoke the SOQL queries. That is the first one. And the second one is by using the Apex programming. That means whenever we are writing the business logic, we can invoke the SOQL query. By using the Apex programming, we can invoke the SOQL queries. Or else by using the workbench tool. So we have a separate tool which is called as a workbench. So by using the workbench also, we can invoke the SOQL query. And also by using the data loader. So in the data loader, whenever we wanted to retrieve the record, in order to retrieve the record, what we can do is we can write the SOQL query in the data loader. Right. So after writing the SOQL query, we can retrieve the information from the Salesforce to the local system. And wherever I wanted to retrieve the data, right, there are some third-party app exchanges are there. So whether it is a third party or whether it is a Salesforce application, whether it is a data loader, which are the application, if I'm trying to connect to Salesforce, and from the Salesforce, if I'm trying to pull the records, that means we need to use the SOQL. If any system is connected to the Salesforce, there are so many applications are there, like there are few third-party system or few app exchanges are there. So app exchange, there are few like a Salesforce inspector, that is one of the app exchange, Salesforce inspector. Now, in case if there is any third party or app exchange, and this app exchange wants to talk to the Salesforce, and in order to pull the data from the Salesforce, right? In order to pull the data from the Salesforce, what we need to do is they have to use the SOQL query. So wherever you are retrieving the data from the Salesforce, everywhere we have to use the SOQL. Now here data loader is a local system. Data loader is local system. Data loader is connected to the Salesforce, right? So from the once it is connected to the Salesforce, if you want to retrieve, if the data loader want to retrieve the data from the Salesforce, they need to use the SOQL. Workbench is another tool. Workbench is another application or another tool. Now this workbench is first it will connect to the Salesforce. And once it is connected to the Salesforce, if they wanted to pull the data from the Salesforce, then they have to use the SOQL. So which are the applications that are connected to the Salesforce? And if they wanted to pull the data from the Salesforce, then it has to be used as SOQL. By using the SOQL, we can retrieve the data. We can retrieve the data. Now let's see how can we use the SOQL in the developer console. In the developer console, how can we use it? Now let's say by using the developer console. In the developer console, when you open the screen, let me open this. Now, for example, this is how your screen will be initially when you try to log in. This is how it looks like. This is how it looks like. Now in this, the part which is related to the query is query editor. Query editor. Now in this query editor, right? When you click on the query editor, whatever here it says enter SOQL query. Here we will write the SOQL. So here we will write the SOQL query. This is called as a query editor. This is called as query editor. In this query editor, we will write the query. Now, once I have written the query editor, that means I have written select and some column names from the object name. So once I write the query, now I need to click on the execute button. I need to click on the execute button. If I click on the execute button, then I can see the result here. Then I can see the result here. Result will be displayed here. This is the result. Write the query here in the query editor. Click on the execute button. When you execute it, the result will be displayed here. In case when we click on the execute button, there are some errors into the query editor. Maybe I have not written the from condition or some spelling mistake is there. In that case, if I have any errors, the errors will be displayed at the bottom here. This is error. If there are any errors on the query, so all the errors will be displayed here. Before executing it, if there are any error, it will display the error here. Now, if you are writing here 10 queries, like first you have written one query and you clicked on the execute. Again, you have written the second query, clicked on the execute button. Again, you have written the third query. Like this, you are writing it up to 10 queries. Now, if you want to go back, like what was my first query? Now, if you wanted to see, because sometimes when we are debugging it or when we are doing the analysis, we might end up writing the at least 5 to 6 queries because we need to deal with which query is the right query to in order to pull the data. Now, once I have written the 10 queries and 10 I have tested it. Now I wanted to go back. What was the first one which I have written because that is the correct one. In case if you wanted to know the history of the current execution from last a few minutes on active session, how many queries that I have executed. If you wanted to know the history will be available here. The history will be available this side. Now that's about it. So in the query editor, you have a query window where you will be writing the queries. And in case if there is now you clicked on the execute button. Once you clicked on the execute button, the result will be displayed here. And if there is any error, it will show error at the bottom. And if you wanted to see the history on the active session, what was the queries were executed. If you wanted to see the history, you can see the history here. And by clicking on this record, first record, you can go back to the first query record. By clicking on the 10th record, you can go back to the 10th one which you have written the query. Now let's see here, example. Now in order to write the logic, in order to write the SOQL query, we need to go to the developer console, expand the tab bar, click on the query editor, and we need to write the SOQL query inside the query editor. Let's assume that I wanted to write the SOQL query. Now let's say here select. Now I have a ID, comma, name, comma, let's say rating from account. Click on execute. Now here, if I click on execute, this is the records it is going to display. In case there is an error here, let's say I did the spelling mistake rating, click on execute. It will show the error at the bottom saying that rating is not a column or not a field in the account object. Just check what is the field name here. It might be end up with __C, or it might be a spelling mistake. So we need to check that and update the field and click on the execute. Now, as soon as I click on execute, so this is the first query that is written. Now let's say here I'm going to write rating where rating equal to 1. Click on execute. So that is the second query. If I wanted to go back to the first query, click on this first query. What will happen? It will go to the first query and click on the execute. If you want to go back to the second query, click on the second query. It will go back to the second query and click on execute. It will show all the warm records. So this is how we will write it. In case if you wanted to know what are the fields are available inside this object, account object, now what you can do is click on file, open. Now select the objects. Now click on here, account, open. You can see all the fields here. Now which are the fields you wanted, you can capture the information. Let's say you wanted to capture the industry. Now comma, industry. Let's execute. This is the third query. Now industry is displayed here. So once you click on execute, then what will happen is it will show the records tabular format, which is a rows and column, where we have a ID, name, rating, industry. So what are the fields you are specifying it? Only those fields will be displayed in the result. Result will be displayed in the form of table, rows and columns. Now let's say the use case of it. Write a SOQL query to fetch the ID, name, rating, industry, annual revenue, phone number, facts, values from the account object. So they want the fields ID, name, rating, industry, annual revenue, phone, and the facts from the account. So in that case, let's say here industry, annual revenue, comma, phone, comma, facts from. It is going to display the account. Now let me remove the where condition because we do not have a where condition. Click on the execute. Now here you see all the history gets keep on adding it. Keep on adding the history. So it will give you whether you modify it, you add a single field or modify anything, everything can be tracked here. Everything can be tracked. Right. So this is how normally we write the query in the developer console. This is inside the developer console. In case if you wanted to retrieve the data from the lead object. From the lead object, if you want to retrieve the data, let's say, for example, write a SOQL query to fetch all the lead records from the object. Fields are ID, first name, last name, company, status, email, phone, fax, industry, rating, annual revenue. Right. So in this case, what you will do, you will say here, how do you write the logic? SOQL query, how do you write it? How do you start with the SOQL query?
Select
Select
ID,
ID,
comma,
first name,
first name, last name.
last name, company, and then status, email, phone number, fax, industry, rating, right? And then finally annual revenue from lead object. From the lead object. Now if I try to execute this in the developer console, execute industry spelling, executed. Now it is displaying the last one, which is called as a lead record. There are 40 records it has pulled. Now every time whenever I click on a execute, there is a new window that gets created. There is a new window that gets created to display the latest records. What are the previous ones are there? The previous ones are here. It is also displays the time. What is the object that we have queried the records and what is the time that we have queried it. So here it will display the object name and what time. Object name and the what time. Right? Object name and what time. So this is going to how it is going to display the data. This is how it is going to display the data. Right? So every time whenever I execute it, it will show the new window gets created here. That new window will be explains about the what is the object and when did I execute that particular, when did I execute the query. That is going to display the time. It is going to display the time. Now, this is how we write it inside the developer console. Now let's take the exam homework. Homework is write a SOQL query to fetch all the case records from the objects. All the case records from the object fields are status, case number, priority, type, reason, origin, subject. And another one, write a SOQL query to fetch all the user records from the object. User records are where you can see all the users information, right? Fields are ID, first name, last name, email, title, department, division, username is active. And write an SOQL query to fetch all the email templates records from the object, like ID, name, description, subject, body, right? Template. So email templates are basically all the email templates are available inside the email template. Now, in case if you don't know what are the fields are available inside the email templates, go to the file, open, object, search here email. Search here email. Email templates. So you will see email templates. Now, if you open this email templates, you can see all the fields that are available inside the email templates, right? And the next assignment is write a SOQL query to fetch hiring manager record from the object. So in the hiring manager, you have a ID, name, contact number, email address, and the location. And the next assignment is write a SOQL query to fetch all the position records from the object. So in the position record, fetch the ID, location, number of vacancies, open date, milestones, HR, email ID, hiring manager. These are the records you need to pull it. And then write a SOQL query to fetch all the public group and queues records from the objects. Now, public groups are nothing but where you can see all the group information, right? So for example, if I click on file, open, object, now if you search here queue, you will not be having it. Now you will have a public groups. Now here it is a group. It is a public group. Now here 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 it is a public group. Now So we have a group which is called as a open. Now here you can see ID, name, developer name, type, email, right? So these are the information. Click on the query, execute it. So you can see the type which explains about the queue. Type which explains about the queue. Now, how do you fetch this? The group information and the queue records. When you are fetching the group, only queue information you need to fetch it. That means you need to specify the where type equal to queue. Execute the SOQL query on the group. Now type equal to queue. That is the where condition. You need to apply the where condition here. Now next one is write a SOQL query to fetch all the profile records from the object. How do you fetch the profile records from the object? Go to the file, open. You have a object called profile. There is a object called profile. Click on this profile and then open. Now here ID, name, and then you can see here, these are the different options which are available. And what you can do is just take the ID and name, execute it. So these are the 47 profiles are available. System admin profile, system 1, system 2, system 4, data sales admin profile, sales standard platform profile. So these all are the standard and custom, both it is pulling it. Right, so all the profile details will be available in the profile object. Take a notes of it. Done. Select a star from is, that is a SQL, not the SOQL. SOQL does not have a star. SOQL does not have a star, that is a SQL. When you use a .NET or a Java, the backend is, the database is SQL. Now in the Salesforce, it's not a SQL. In the Salesforce, it is a SOQL, Salesforce Object Query Language. When you write here star, instead of a field name, if you specify the star, you will not be able to get. Star does not work in the Salesforce. You need to specify the field's name here. That's the reason it is saying that. In case if you want all the columns, now yesterday I have discussed about all the fields. Now yesterday I have discussed about the schema, right? So in the schema, you need to get all the field names and pass those field names into the, instead of specifying the ID, you need to pass all the fields here. Or else, in the easiest way is, what you can do is, easiest way is you can do here fields all. Mostly this will work in the Apex class, but here it does not work. SOQL fields function must have a limit of at most 200. Let's say here I'm going to say standard. Standard, click on the execute. Now these are the standard. Now instead of a profile, I'll say account. Execute it. Right, these are the standard fields. Now all the fields you cannot fetch here. Now you can say fields, standard, fields, custom. Right, instead of standard, I'll say here custom. Click on execute. Now custom is also, we have a more than 200. So it does not work all the time. Now instead of a select star, if you want to put a select star from SQL, whatever we have it, here we can use the fields all or a field standard or fields custom, but it is only the, it will have only the 200 maximum fields it can allow. 200 maximum fields it can allow. So in case, in that case, what you can say here is limit 200. Now these are the all. These are the all records. So you can use the fields all or a fields standard or a fields custom. The reason why we do not use the fields all in the real time is there are few fields which we do not want at all. Like this is the one field. Let's say last modified by, last modified created date, right? System modified. And there is a is active, is inactive, or some fields will be there, which we do not need at all. Which we do not need at all. So those we do not want to get the information. There is some serial numbers, right? There are some information, custom information will be there. These all data we do not need it. The reason we do not use is there are some fields which are hidden. Salesforce is using those hidden fields, but developer does not need it. So that's the reason we do not use the fields all in the real time. No. What are the different ways to invoke the SOQL queries?
By developers console, Apex programming, workbench tool, data loader tool.
Right. In developer console, where should we write the SOQL query?
Query editor.
Query editor. No. SOQL queries are, there are two types. We can write it in the, now we have seen how to execute the query in the developer console. In the developer console, how to execute it, we have seen. Assume that I wanted to write a, instead of executing this query, I need to write the logic inside the Apex class. That means I need to create a new Apex class. In the Apex class, I wanted to implement a logic of SOQL. When we want to implement a SOQL, that means if I wanted to invoke the SOQL query inside the Apex program. If I want to invoke the SOQL queries inside the Apex programming, there are two types are there. One is a static SOQL query, another one is a dynamic SOQL query. Dynamic SOQL query. Now take a notes of it. Now, let's see the static SOQL query. Now, for static SOQL query, how can we implement? Static is nothing but a fixed. Static is nothing but a fixed. Now, in this approach, the SOQL query cannot include any columns. We cannot include any columns conditions at runtime. We cannot specify during the runtime. We cannot specify the SOQL query. So in this approach, the SOQL query cannot include any column and condition during the runtime. That means if I have written the SOQL query inside the Apex class, exactly the same SOQL query gets executed while Apex class is running. While Apex class is running. Now, so in that case, that means whenever we are implementing the Apex class, now upon preparing the query, we have to specify the required column and the conditions. That means the syntax will be select field API names object from object API name. So this is the standard SOQL query. This is standard SOQL query. Now, this is normally when I write in the query editor, I'll write like this: select field API name from the object name. But if I'm writing this query in the Apex, we have to enclose with the square brackets. So that means within the square brackets, we need to specify the static SOQL query inside the Apex. Inside the Apex, we need to specify the within the square bracket. Within the square bracket, we have to specify it. Example, select ID, comma name from like a name, rating, industry, annual revenue from account. But where did we specify? We specified within the square bracket. We specified within the square bracket. Now here, static SOQL query will be executed automatically by default. During the runtime, I cannot change the SOQL query. Whatever I have written the SOQL query in the Apex class, exactly the same SOQL query gets executed while implementing the logic. While implementing the logic. Let's say here. Now, for example, from the developer console, let's say here, I'm removing this. I'll specify the first scenario for this. Now, normally, if I wanted to write a, let's say here, I'm writing the ID, comma, name, comma, rating, comma, industry. And one more thing, it is not a case sensitive. You can write a whether same or a different, like I'm using the small I. If I use a small I also, it works. It's not a like a exactly the same API name I need to use it. Now you can use the small capital letters also can use it. So that works. Now, for example, if I have this record, if I have this query, now this query I'm writing it in the query editor. But if I wanted to execute it from the anonymous window or from the Apex, now how do we do it? Now I'll take it here. If I wanted to execute it from the Apex, now we have to write it within the square bracket. Now here we are going to get the list of account records. That means I need to store it into the list of account. List of account. So list of account is the collection data type, and I'm storing into the ACC equal to select ID, comma, name, comma, rating, comma, industry from account. Right? Now from this account, now I'm going to look through this. If ACC, right? ACC.id is not equal to null. If ACC.id not equal to null, that means if this is not null, let's say that I'm going to get only the one record instead of multiple, I'm going to get only one record. So limit one. Now, what I can do is, or else let's go for it. Limit 5 records. Let's pull the file records. Now here I have a collection data type. Now in this collection data type, I need to check the size of it. The size of it is my size is greater than 0. That means I have some records which are pulling it from the database. And this account size is greater than 0. If account size is greater than 0, then I'm going to loop through the for loop account ACC equal to, let's say that this variable name is ACC list. Now here it is a ACC list. For this ACC list, what we are going to do is I'm just going to print the system.debug. Let's say this is account name. And the account name is acc.name. And I'll also specify here account ID. Let's take plus acc.id. Now I'm printing these values. Now let's go ahead and execute it. Now all 77 records, it is going to print it. What happened? ACC list. Execute the highlighted one, third column variable.
Ma'am, correct that ACC to ACC list, ma'am.
ACC list. So let's change this ACC list. Now let's go ahead and execute it. Now debug. Now here account name, account ID. We are pulling the 5 records, right? So it is displaying the 5 information. Now this is how during the runtime, during the execution of time, I cannot change this static SOQL. Right? So whatever I have written in the program, that the same thing will be executed. When I click on the execute highlight. That means during the runtime, I cannot change the static SOQL query. Take a notes of it.
Ma'am, we can add the where condition in the select query, right? In the statics.
In static where condition also we can write it. So similarly, we have here, now take a note, I'll show that. Done. Let's assume that we have a table. right? Inside this table, there are multiple records are there. Assume that this is the ID, name, rating, and industry. Assume that annual revenue. These are the fields which are available. ID, name, rating, industry, and the annual revenue. Let's assume that ID. So account table, account object, this is the account object. Account object IDs always starts with a 001. Always starts with a 001. Right, so this is the first record. Let's say name is Nick and rating is Wong. Right, industry is banking and annual revenue is some 45 lakhs. Now the same information, let's say here, the another record, let's say 001, account ID starts with 001. And let's add a few more records. Now, let's say here David. And Mark. Let's say Paul. Let's say here rating is cold and hot, warm. Industry is banking, finance, and let's say another one banking. Let's say agriculture. And annual revenue something. I'm just adding some number here. Right? So this is the account object. In the account object, we have a data. Now, if I want to get all the records from the Salesforce, if I wanted to get all the records from the Salesforce table, the account object table, then what we need to do, we need to directly write the query. Now, if I'm writing the query inside the Apex, then I have to enclose it with the square bracket. Inside the square bracket, I will specify that select ID, comma, name, comma, rating, comma, industry, comma, annual revenue. Annual revenue. Now, these are the records which I'm trying to pull. Now, when I pull these records from the account object, Now, here I did not mention any condition. I do not have any condition. That means almost all 4 records it is going to pull. When it is going to pull the all 4 records, then I'm going to specify here list of accounts. That means I'm going to store this all the records inside the list of records, right? So for example, I wanted to pull only the records that are having the rating equal to 1. Rating equal to 1. Possibility that more than one record might be having the rating equal to 1. So for that case also, I'm going to use the list of account ACC list 1. ACC list 1 equal to, within the square bracket, I'll specify the select ID, comma, name, comma, rating, from account where rating equal to 1. Where rating equal to 1. Now what will happen? This is also static. This is also static. During the execution, I cannot change this SOQL query. This is also I am getting more than 1 record, right? If I say here limit equal to 1 also, and I can store into the collection. I'm getting the only 1 record, but I can still store it into the collection. There is no harm if I'm getting the 1 record storing into the collection, right? So this is how we try to get it. So in this case, what will happen if I say rating equal to 1 from the account? So what will happen from the table? I'm going to pull the 2 records. The 2 records are, one is a warm and the second one is this last one. These 2 records it is going to pull, and this query I cannot change it during the execution or during the runtime. I cannot change the query. I cannot change the query. Right? So this is how this is the static. Whether you write a where condition, having condition, or a group by, order by, whatever you write it. So those all are a static. Those all are static. Now this static SOQL queries, we cannot change it. Everything I'm declaring it here during implementation of the Apex class. Whenever we are writing a static, we cannot change anything from the while executing. That means during the runtime, I cannot change it. Is that clear?
Clear, ma'am.
Okay, so let's move on. Now, so static SOQL queries. If the SOQL query returns only 1 record, that is a case 1. Case 2 is if the SOQL returns multiple records. For the case 1, if you want only 1 record to be specified, now you can specify here if the SOQL query returns only 1 record as a result, then we have to store that result in the defined variable. You can either store it into the single record. Now, for example, it is account object or account table has only 1 record. When you have a 1 record, you can just store it into the account object, single variable, single record. Now this is, it stores the only single record. Account ACC equal to, it is pulling only 1 record. Assume that account object is having only 1 record. In that case, it is just going to pull the only 1 record. You can simply specify acc.id not equal to null. Then you can print the system.debug. What are the values you wanted to print? You can print it. And in the case 2 scenario is, if there are multiple records, then you have to store it into the list of collection. The one which we have seen, right? So list of accounts, list accounts equal to select ID, comma name, comma rating from account. Then you can print the values. What are the size is there? You can print the size. Either you can check if list account dot size is greater than 0, or if you want to check, there are 2 ways to cross verify whether you have a data in this or not. If it is a record is a single record, it is returning it, then you have a only one way to cross verify is acc.id not equal to null, right? But if it is a collection, then either you can check the collection, whether you have a data by checking the size, or else you can check if acc dot is empty. We have something called is empty. If it is a not empty, now you can check if it is a not empty. acc dot is not is empty, and then you need to put a not here. This is nothing but a not. Exclamation is nothing but a not, which is equal to acc. What are the acc list? Acc list dot is empty. Not equal to null. Not equal to null. So this is not equal to. If exclamation not equal to ACC.empty is nothing but ACC list is empty, not equal to null. Not equal to null or a empty. Right, either you can check the size of it or else you can check if it is not empty. If it is not empty. Right, so here we are checking the size. What is the size of this? So it will return the size. If it is a not equal to empty, then we are looping through the list of the account records. Then we are printing the values. We are printing the values. So that's about the static SOQL queries. Now coming to the dynamic SOQL queries. Coming to the dynamic SOQL query. So dynamic SOQL queries are basically, in this approach, we can supply the column conditions to the SOQL query dynamically. That means I need not to statically mention the column name. I can pass the column names and as well as the condition during the runtime. During the runtime, I can pass the fields, I can pass the conditions, I can pass the dynamically which fields I wanted to query it. So only thing we need to store the dynamic SOQL query inside the string variable. You cannot write like this. Now, whatever we are writing it here, select, right, list of account, like this, you cannot write it. For dynamic query, dynamic SOQL queries always need to be stored into the string variable. That means you need to specify the string ACC list equal to, then you need to specify within the string, you need to specify the select. You need to specify the select. Whatever the SOQL query is there, you need to write the SOQL query within this. So string ACC list, you cannot specify the collection or a account object, you cannot specify. You have to always store the string. These are the dynamic. Dynamic queries always stores into the string variable. Always stores into the dynamic variable. So syntax is string variable name equal to SOQL query. String variable name equal to SOQL query. So this is how we need to specify the dynamic SOQL query. Now example, string account query equal to, I have written the select ID name rating from account. So what we are doing is, instead of writing into the square brackets, what I'm doing is I'm specifying within the single quotes. I'm specifying within the single quotes. That means I'm storing the values into this field. Now here I have mentioned the hard-coded field here, but this is just an example. Just an example. Now for a static SOQL query, we write the SOQL query within the square bracket. For dynamic, we will write it within the single quotes. The SOQL query, we will write it within the single quotes, because the SOQL query, we will store it into the string. We will store it into the string. Now take a notes of it.
Joanna?
Take a notes of it. Press shape.
Ma'am, do we have any reason behind why we are storing it into the string in dynamic queries?
Because we are not writing the SOQL query here. We are yet to build the SOQL query. SOQL query is built during the runtime. So that's the reason we have to store it into the string. Then during the runtime, we need to convert that string into the SOQL query.
Okay.
Now, let's see. Done with the notes? Yep. So let's see. So in order to dynamic SOQL query, we need to execute a dynamic SOQL query manually by using the database.query. Now we are writing the SOQL query within the string. Now during the runtime, I need to convert this string to the query. So when I wanted to convert this string to the query, convert string to the query during the runtime. If I wanted to convert this string to the query, what we have to do is we have to use the standard method which is provided by the Salesforce that is available inside the namespace called database. Database.query. Database.query. Query is the method. So by using this database.query, inside this query, we need to pass the string. Now here, we need to pass the string. SOQL string. Right, so after passing all the values, now we need to convert that SOQL string to the query. In order to convert that, what we will do is we will use the database.query method. Now by using the database.query method, which always return the result in the form of list collection. Example, list of account list equal to database.query. Now I'm passing the accounts query. Whatever the string query is there, I'm passing that string query inside the database.query. Now, once this is executed, now I'll get the output of the exact account records. Now, these account records, we are going to check whether it is empty or not. If it is not empty, we will loop through the account ACC : list of the accounts. Then we are going to print system.debug account name, system.debug account rating. Then we are going to close this record. Right? So only the difference between the static and dynamic is dynamic will store it into the SOQL. Dynamic is stored into the string, and that string we need to pass all the conditions during the runtime. Once we pass the information during the runtime to the SOQL string, then we need to convert that SOQL string to the query. In order to convert that, we will use the database.query. And by using this, we will convert to this query, and then we will execute that SOQL query, store that SOQL query into the collection, the object collection. And if it is not empty, then we will try to print the value. So that's how we will do it in the dynamic. Take a notes of it.
Ma'am, can you explain when to use these like static or dynamic?
Yeah, we will see that. We are yet to do the practical.
Hello? 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 Hello?
No. Okay, so we will see that later. Now questions, what is the different ways to invoke the SOQL query in Apex?
Static and dynamic.
Static and dynamic. Syntax for the static SOQL query.
Select field API name from object name.
Syntax for the SOQL query. Syntax for SOQL query.
Hello? Me mata, me mata.
Select API name from the object. Static SOQL query. When if I wanted to, yeah, we have to specify within the square bracket. So whatever the query is there, that needs to be specified within the square brackets. Syntax for dynamic SOQL query. Syntax for dynamic SOQL query. How to write the dynamic SOQL query?
String variable name equals to SOQL query.
Right. So we need to specify everything into the string. And then once we build the string, then we need to convert that string into the query by using the database.query. Now we will see the use case for the static and dynamic both tomorrow. And we will see the differences between the how to write a logic of the static SOQL query and how to write a logic for the dynamic SOQL query. When to use it, we will see tomorrow. Okay. So today we are ending up at 9:30 because I have another